we have the pleasure of including Mary Jane Montana. She's the building inspector and county fire marshal. She'll be speaking about the Joint Powers Risk Reduction Authority and the County Vegetation Abatement Ordinance.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see such a great turnout. Fire prevention is near and dear to my heart. I've been a Lake County resident for over 5 decades. And no, I wasn't born here, so I'm old. But the first thing I want to talk about is the Hazardous Vegetation Abatement Ordinance. That went in front of the Board of Supervisors several times. It is a tool that we can use to both assess properties, when I say assess, inspect them, and then if the landowners choose not to go forward with the results of the inspection and our letter requesting them to remove hazardous vegetation, and it gives us the powers to go in and abate it if necessary. And also, as a last-ditch effort, we can assess fines as well. I don't anticipate a lot of fines being assessed. I anticipate, as most of our code enforcement efforts, that we try to work with the property owner to get compliance that's much more effective and cost-effective than trying to go in with a contractor and or fining people. The biggest thing that makes this different from what's already been on the books with Public Resources Code 4290, our old Chapter 13, as well as the California Building and Fire Codes, is this provides for hazardous vegetation abatement on unimproved parcels. So what happens is we get areas where we have some, I'll call them residential size lots that are maybe 1/4 of an acre, maybe less, and people take their clearing to the edge of the property. That's as far as they can get. But you've got a large parcel, maybe not so large, but a parcel next to you that doesn't have a house on it, and so they are not required under state law or other provisions of codes to clear that property to help protect both your property and theirs. So this gives us some teeth to say to that owner of that vacant parcel, hey, you need to provide at least a total of 100 feet of protection, fuel reduction, not necessarily clear cutting or bulldozing down or anything else. It's a graduated sort of clearing, as Calfire spoke about. There's specific requirements for next to your house and individual trees and specimens next to your house. It's a little different for the next 30 feet, and then from 30 to 100 feet, it's different. Primarily ladder fuels, understory clearing, that sort of thing, the further you get away from a structure. So those folks will be required to do what we would look at as sort of the tier 3 clearing, the removal of understory, dead trees, those sort of things, to provide a total of 100-foot clearance from the nearest structure. So some folks are going to say, well, why should I provide protection for my neighbor? It's not my problem. It is their problem. Everybody lives here, and those that don't live here, coming back to what used to be your beautiful mountain property with the trees, now coming back to the place with the sticks sticking in the air is a little bit different, and it's in their best interests as well. There's also some laws on the books in different places where if something on your property causes damage to your neighbor's property, there's a possibility you may be held liable. So it's in their best interest to clean it up. So like I said, the tool that we have is the inspection, and we'll be using a form similar to or the same as the LE 100 that Calfire uses, so it's consistent. So the first thing that will happen on April 25th, which is when the ordinance actually goes into effect, I have a team of, at this point in time, 4 to 5 code enforcement and building inspectors that'll be going out in the areas that we, along with the fire chiefs, feel are the most, I won't say most important, but have the most hazard for the greatest number of densely populated people. Those areas off the top of my head are places like the Three Rivieras, Buckingham. There's also the areas up here that did not burn, or as time rolls on, now we have quite a stand of dead trees that are breaking off, making nice kindling, and along with revegetation of the understory and the brushes that add to it. So in some cases, it may be areas that have already burned that we'll be looking at, maybe not this year, but probably next year. So I've got 5 inspectors. We've got over 60,000 parcels in the county, so obviously I'm not going to get to everything this year. So we're going to prioritize it. If you know of an area that's next to you that you think poses a hazard, please email me and we'll fit it in on the list where we feel it's appropriate as far as hazard to the most number of people. So we'll begin the inspections. We'll provide the property owner and tenant with a copy of the notice of the inspection, as well as a letter asking them or informing them that they have 30 days to get the property into compliance, or contact us. If for some reason they're unable to physically, financially, or for some other reason because they're remote, away, far away from here, contact us, and then we'll help put them in contact with other folks that have some grant money to help folks that don't have the money to take care of their own property. Other organizations that can physically help them, along with the schools. We've begun a discussion with them for kids to be able to do some of this stuff for their community service. Lots of things. The biggest problem is this goes into effect April 25th. Everybody has 30 days to come into compliance. So by the time we're out there then with a 10-day letter saying you have to do this, or we're getting a contractor, we're creeping very, very close into what's already fire season. So the methods that may need to be done may end up going from a large equipment to smaller hand areas in a more contained area, depending on what we're looking at. So we may not get the full effect this year because of the amount of time before we can actually put it in place. And the same thing goes for the community benefit zones for Rivieras and Buckingham. They're facing the same issues. In some cases, the homeowners have already done some initial surveys of the areas, given us a list of parcels that are of the greatest concern for the homeowners association. So we'll look at those first and then get those letters out. As soon as we're done with the inspections, we come back in, make a copy of that, and send a letter immediately to those people that need to make changes. So hoping that goes fairly quickly, because like I said, this year we have a very short window to operate in. We will be going back to the Board of Supervisors in 6 months from April. So in October, about the time when things are done, and reviewing on how it worked, did it work, what were the challenges, and what were the successes that we had. Hopefully more successes than challenges. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I have a couple of copies of the actual ordinance if you'd like that. It's not online yet. It takes a little while to get those ordinances that have passed to go online. So I don't expect that probably until May, but we have them at the office. I can email it to you if you just want to have a copy. Then the other thing that Magdalena asked me to speak about is what's called the Risk Reduction Authority, Joint Powers Authority. This is a group that was brought together to make a quasi-government legislative sort of a group that has the power to primarily apply for grants, is the biggest function that this does, as well as coordinating efforts between the county, the Watershed Protection District, and all of the fire districts. Those are the members that make up the Risk Reduction Authority. They're meeting at this point in time monthly. The next meeting is next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I think it's next Wednesday, yeah, at 3 o'clock. And the public is invited. We had I don't know, 6 or 7 people from Cobb up there at the last meeting, and it was good. That's what the board members need to hear, your interest in the things that they're looking at and going forward, and hopefully they will be able to coordinate efforts as far as grant writing and applications and that sort of thing. No, they're not taking all the money away from everybody. It's going to be a cooperative effort. So they've only had 3 meetings, so they're just getting off the ground. I believe this is the first risk reduction authority, JPA, in the state of California, is what we were told, for wildfire in particular. Yeah, we are actually, based on what we hear when we go elsewhere, pretty much ahead of the curve on a lot of things, because unfortunately we've had way too much experience. Last year when we had the Mendo Complex fire, which, is, you all know, was the largest fire acreage-wise in California, Calfire was pretty amazed how quickly a lot of our local folks got together and were able to assist them, go in, do damage assessment, do all the things that the other places aren't quite ready for yet and haven't had to do it for the last 6 years, every year it seems like. So I'm hoping this year we're not going to be doing any of that.
Can we keep you here?
Can you keep me here?
Yeah, for a second.
Yeah.
So we wanted to open the floor for questions from the audience, and then share some more information about related to this.
Yeah.
So would the council chair please come up and moderate?
Yeah, I see a question right all the way in the back. Go ahead. The question really has to do with a neighbor who's not normally in residence there, who has a hazardous tree close to her property, who's resisting or doesn't want to be told what to do, basically.
Well, it depends. She says he's planting redwood trees and has planted one relatively close. There are exceptions for single species of trees that don't overhang the house, that have fire-resistant or clearing around them as well. So again, it's not something you can say here and paint a broad brush. You have to see the individual property and what it entails. So it may or may not be something that has to go or has to be moved.
And one of our local fire and forestry experts here says, you should feel a little bit relieved that redwoods in particular are not that susceptible to fire.
And actually, it's a wood that's used in ignition-resistant construction because it is not as flammable as a lot of the other trees are.
Okay, Gwyneth? Okay.
Sure.
Contact email, please.
Yep. It's Mary Jane, one word, MaryJane .Montana, just like the state, MONTANA, at Lake County CA, all one word, lakecountyca.gov.
Okay. No.
Yes.
No, it's just CA. Lake
Well,
County.
no, Lake County
CA.
CA,
Got
yes.
It. Got it. Okay. Okay. Gary, you had a. So the question was whether she has any influence on adjusting the opening date of the burn ban based on weather rather than just the calendar date.
I do not, although I attend all fire chiefs meetings and for input on things that are going on in the county. I'm not a member, nor, I can bring it up and ask, but influence, no, I have none.
I think we would appreciate bringing the question up, especially since we had such a late wet season, and the window of clearing pressing up against May 1st is going to be tricky. Okay, yes, ma'am, over there. Second, go ahead.
No, absolutely. Start now. If you know that.
The question was whether you should wait for the inspections, or particularly if you know that you've got a neighbor with a hazardous lot, should you just go ahead and contact them?
Well, or start work on your own
Or start
property.
work
Don't
on
wait
your own.
for us to give you the inspection
The
notice
official.
or the letter. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and go ahead and forward that information to that email, and that's the best way to do it, and we're keeping track of that.
Okay, all the way back in the corner, and then to the gentleman in the black hat.
If the county has to do the cleanup with and pay for the cost, yes, liens will be placed against the properties. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not expected to happen in the first 2 months. But if the property owner cannot or refuses to do the work, and we feel that it poses a great enough hazard to the rest of the properties around, we'll go forward with a contractor and do the work and then place a lien on the property.
The question was how a contractor would get involved in getting on the list to get the work.
Yeah.
Okay. Gentlemen,
And in some cases, it doesn't need to be a contractor. I spoke with Contractors License Board, and somebody that is doing the work that's hand clearing or just using up to 15 feet clearing with chainsaws or loppers and that sort of thing. No heavy equipment on site, does not have to be a contractor.
okay, great. Gentleman in the black hat, yes. The question was about some lots where people have just walked away and there's just standing dead wood. Should they send addresses to Mary Jane? And she said, yeah.
I came even more unprepared. I didn't bring my cards.
Okay, so, okay, what's your...
I will repeat that.
Yeah. Okay, and then the gentleman in the red scarf, yes. The question was, what are those pink and blue streamers now hanging on my trees? I'm used to the red and orange ones from PG&E. What are these new ones?
They're not mine. I don't know where.
Yeah.
But I suspect it's PG&E or other.
Okay. Yes? Okay, here we go. From the South Lake Fire Safe Council website, it says the ribbon color white says it's the 2019 fuel reduction program. Near power poles, trimming or cutting, PG&E will contact the homeowner and logs will be removed if homeowner signs a form. The blue and white striped ones mean it's the 2019 fuel reduction program near water, and this warns crews. The orange ones mean it's the 2018 fuel reduction program, and the color changes every year. Some of you might just be getting the New Year's colors. Their painted orange dot on the tree means to trim it, and a painted X means cut the tree. Pink ribbons mean it's an estimated arbor program. Poles are being moved. Pink means clear the area for a new pole. There you go. Who knew? Okay, gentleman in the green shirt in the back. Okay, so the question was not just about people who own property, but what about other organizations? This gentleman, his board is against the Mutual Water Company, and they also are they also subject to these inspections?
They are, as well as I know people tend to bring it up. What about Caltrans? What about BLM? What about all of them? Other government agencies, not water companies, not power, not phone, but other government agencies, the state of California, the county of Lake, the federal government, other governmental agencies, we can tell them, we can inspect it, we can give them the results of the inspection and ask them to clear it. We can't make them. But we can tell them, we've put them on notice, and usually their attorneys will tell them, you probably need to take a look at that, so.
Yes, pointing out that more land is
Particularly-
owned by agencies and government than individuals.
Unfortunately, that's the laws of the United States. It's called sovereign immunity, and one lower down one cannot tell those that are higher on the food chain what to do or make them do it. We can ask them. We also have no jurisdiction over tribal governments as well.
So he's pointing out that we can put pressure on them. I mean, certainly we can write to our state representatives, our congressmen, and say, you know, maybe if there's a particular spot that we feel is an issue, this is the kind of thing that we could do through the Cobb Area Council, come to the council meetings, and we're equipped to organize a letter writing campaign. We have a certain amount of standing, and we can go and represent the people of our community to our local folks.
I just want to address the thing about the water company. I'm not a representative of the water company, but I had a direct conversation with Robert Stark, who you all know as the former general manager, retired now. And they've been going through a process of getting their money from the county because they had to take over the Bonanza Springs, for example, from the state. And so they've just been going through that process to even just get the money. Once the money is in hand, then they have to look at all the priority areas. And then, but they are very, very aware of these, of all of these problems. So it will be handled.
Defensible space is not clear cutting.
Right. We're going to be showing some more things later this evening to talk about the difference between good fire and bad fire, so to speak. We were expecting Peter Hess here to also talk about the chaparral, because that's a very sensitive issue altogether.
Okay, Pat? She's asking, apparently she had filled out a form with code enforcement, and the question was whether code enforcement shares that information.
Photographs would be fine. Video is a little bit more difficult for us to file and things like that, but photographs would be great.
Question was if you're submitting a report of a neighbor's property that you feel is hazardous, should you include photographs? Yes, ma'am.
There will be. I haven't selected exactly where those will be, but like I said, I've got 4 to 5 inspectors that'll be going out, and they'll each be assigned an area with priorities, and then as those are completed, they'll go to the next area for priority. As long as those Firewise organizations are aware that that they're, being a liaison in between. Yeah, it's always easier when I get one email with 10 signatures than 10 emails with 1 signature each. Yeah.
I guess I should answer that one too. So if you look around the room, you'll see Group 6, Group 5, Group 4, Group 3, Group 2, Group 1. Those are the Firewise groups that this lady here was mentioning. Cobb area has been divided into 6 groups. There are 4 now that have been formally certified, and I believe that every one of the coordinators for those groups are in the room. Yeah. So we have been put on notice through Mary Jane. Get your residents to sign that and then send it to her. Yes?
It ends up the same way. So.
Okay, Cindy? Okay. Anyone in the room have their LE 100 inspections done last year? Oh, I think I can count it on one hand. So, yeah. Okay, Kyle. The question was whether or not the county's going to be using chemical herbicides for fuel reduction. So,
I'm not involved with that portion of it.
Yep.
That could probably be answered by Public Works because that tends to happen along county roads.
Right.
I don't know.
Question was, I've cleared a lot of trees, and now I'm noticing a lot of wind coming through. What can I do about that?
Some species can be used as windbreaks that are not necessarily a high fire hazard that can help with that. And, place it in an appropriate position on the property, away from property lines, away from structures, it can help with that. There are different species. You might want to speak to the Native Plant Society. They may have some suggestions as well. And, a small area of windbreak may give you a lot of relief depending on where it's located. You may want to pay attention to where the direction that the wind comes from, the prevailing winds, and then consider a short windbreak with an appropriate species of trees.
Okay.
Yeah, it sometimes can be a catch-22. And the other thing that, although we're talking about hazardous vegetation abatement and appropriate defensible space, the other piece of the puzzle that we're not talking about is the hardening of your home and structures through proper and appropriate methods and materials of construction. That's the second piece of this puzzle, that although you can have fairly good defensible space, if your property is not resistant particularly to blowing embers and radiant heat fronts, the defensible space is not as useful. So that's other things that we'll be looking at probably in the next year or so.
Right.
And programs to help
there'll
that.
be also material in the room today, and
Yep.
we'll be hearing more about that during the rest of the morning. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you very much, Mary Jane.
Okay, thank you.